Okay, so debug allow breakpoints everywhere. So by default, this setting is set to false. Now, in order for me to show you most of these options, we actually need to set up a debug session. So let me show you how that works. I have a project here, which is my website. And, by default, you can set breakpoints on an HTML file, right? For maybe obvious reasons. And HTML is not debuggable in the programming language sense, right? So anyway, let's set the debug session and we'll talk about that later. So to set up a debug session, we can go to the debug tab, and if we press play, VS Code will ask you to select an environment. Now, Node.js doesn't process HTML files, so this doesn't work. So what we actually need is to install something that can process HTML files like Chrome. So let's install debugger for Chrome, which will launch the HTML file on Chrome and then connect its developer tools to VS Code. So let's give that a try. Now, if we try and launch, we have Chrome's configuration, right? And this is Chrome's configuration. And there's a problem here. It's that I don't have a server installed. So we can't actually launch this project against localhost, like it says here, because there's nothing there. But I'm just gonna show you what happens, right? So site can't be reached, I don't have a server installed. So for most websites and applications, you will actually need to have a server installed and launch against localhost, and so that you can see the website. But in this particular case, this website just works launching from the file system because it just loads local CSS and JavaScript files. So I'm gonna just launch the file so I can grab the path and then put this in the URL. So it's just gonna launch from the file system, and let's remove against localhost because it's not launching against localhost. And now if you press play, the debug session has started, right? Now, we can talk about the debug allow breakpoints everywhere setting. It's set to false, meaning we can't set breakpoints here, but let's set it to true. And now we can. You see this little red dot? If you click it, that means you set a breakpoint there, or you can just right-click it, right-click the line and add a breakpoint. By the way, you can also set inline breakpoints, which is sometimes useful depending on how you code. So now this HTML file, you can actually set breakpoints in this HTML file, right? Now, obviously, breakpoints only work in code. So if you try and set a breakpoint here, for example, it's not gonna do anything because this is not code, right? It can't be debugged. But if you set one here, and notice that this is first, so we should hit this breakpoint first, and then we should hit that one. That's not what's gonna happen. This will be ignored, and we will hit this breakpoint. So let's give that a try. Let's launch. And that's what happened. We hit this breakpoint, and you can see that we've hit this breakpoint because the page didn't load anymore. It's it's like suspended. It's paused in Visual Studio Code, and this is the animation that my website has while it's loading. And you can just I think this is jump over. Step over. You can do it in Chrome itself, or you can just play and run the whole script. But you have more options here, so you can just do that here, or you can just press play and let the website fully load. Okay, so this is what that does. Now let's close this out, put this to full screen. Now remember that even though this is useful, you can only actually set breakpoint. I mean, you can set breakpoints everywhere, but they only work if you're actually setting a breakpoint in code. So something that's actually debuggable. Okay, so I would leave the setting as true because it's, for obvious reasons, it's very useful.